Observe the right great toe of this patient. The lateral portion of the toe up to the nail fold is acutely inflamed and swollen. The lateral edge of the toenail seems to be buried in the inflamed tissue. This is a typical presentation of an ingrowing toenail or onychocryptosis. There is excessive lateral growth of the nail into the nail fold. When the person uses tight-fitting shoes, the sharp lateral edge of the nail gradually digs into the nail fold and lacerates it. The nail fold gets infected and swollen, more commonly on the lateral side. It may develop an abscess, or sometimes the infection may spread under the nail, causing acute paronychia. In chronic cases, granulation tissue is seen in the nail fold margin. Note this case of ingrowing toenail showing protuberant granulation tissue covered with a scab at the lateral nail margin. The ingrowing toenail is treated by excision of a strip of nail at the margins along with the underlying nail bed so that the lateral edge does not grow again. This was a case of ingrowing toenail or onychocryptosis. Observe the yellowish colored well circumscribed plaques in the skin of the upper eyelids of this patient. They are slightly raised, flat, and pale yellow in color. These are fat deposits in the skin and are termed as xanthelasma or xanthelasma palpebrarum. They are more commonly seen in the upper eyelids and usually near the inner canthus. Now we shall see another patient with xanthelasma palpebrarum. Note the pale yellow, raised and well circumscribed patches of xanthelasma around both the eyes near the inner canthus. Xanthelasma are often associated with hypercholesterolemia but may occur in normal persons also. They are harmless but may be excised for cosmetic reasons. This boy has a cystic swelling in the right inguinoscrotal region. It is an encysted hydrocele of the cord. We will now see two tests which will lead us to the diagnosis of this swelling. Note the mobility of the swelling. Now I will pull down the testis with my right hand and test the mobility again. The swelling got pulled down slightly and it became immobile. This is a positive traction test. It indicates that the swelling is related to the cord. So when the traction is applied to the cord by pulling down the testis, the swelling becomes fixed. Now I will fix the swelling with my left hand and apply a torch to the other side of the swelling. The swelling becomes illuminated and glows red. This is a positive transillumination test. It indicates that the swelling contains clear fluid and has a thin transparent wall. A positive traction test with positive transillumination are diagnostic of encysted hydrocele of the cord. Note the hyperpigmentation over the skin of the upper abdomen. This patient has chronic epigastric pain since more than 4 years. He uses fomentation with a hot water bag for prolonged times, which has resulted in this hyperpigmentation. Hot water bag, when held to the skin, causes erythema, a temporary erythema due to first-degree burns. But when used over prolonged periods with increasingly higher temperatures, it induces hyperpigmentation. The presence of this sign of patchy hyperpigmentation indicates the presence of chronic severe pain, and it also indicates the site of pain. This is another patient showing similar hyperpigmentation over the lower abdomen. Needless to say, she had chronic and severe lower abdominal pain. In this section, we shall see two cases of chest wall swellings arising from the ribs. Observe the swelling in the right infraaxillary region. Its border is ill-defined, suggesting a deep swelling, and the overlying skin is normal. On palpation, the swelling is bony hard and it is fixed to the underlying rib. A hard swelling arising from the ribs is a bone tumor, either primary or secondary. Since the swelling is hard, we do not test for fluctuation, reducibility or impulse on cuffing. An X-ray of the chest shows destruction of the underlying ribs. Only a biopsy will give the correct tissue diagnosis. Compared to this, now note this swelling over the left lower chest. It is soft and fluctuant. It is non-tender and the overlying skin is normal. If a chest wall swelling is soft and fluctuant, it is most likely to be a cold abscess or a pyogenic abscess. But a pyogenic abscess would have been very tender and overlying skin will be red, shiny and edematous. So this is likely to be a cold abscess. Over the chest wall, we must do two special tests. First, compress the swelling gently and see whether it is reducible. If the cold abscess is arising from inside the chest in the intercostal lymph nodes, then it may be reducible. Then ask the patient to cuff. A cuff impulse is not felt, which means that there is no intrathoracic extension of the swelling. These two tests must be routinely performed if there is a soft swelling over the chest wall. This 8-year-old boy presented with hypopigmented patches on his cheeks since 2 months. There is no itching. Let us inspect the patches closely. The skin over the patch has a dry look with fine scaly surface. The sensations are normal over the patch. This is pityriasis alba. Let us learn to diagnose pityriasis alba from other hypopigmented patches. First, let me consider leukoderma. This patient is dark-skinned, so these patches of pityriasis alba are seen very prominently. But note that there is just a mild hypopigmentation, which is quite different from total depigmentation in leukoderma. These are patches of leukoderma over the hands showing total depigmentation. Second possibility is tiniasis or ringworm. The border of the patches of pityriasis alba is ill-defined. Patches of tiniasis, as seen over the abdomen here, have a raised active border with lot of itching. Thirdly, in our country, we must also think of leprosy. This patient has a hypopigmented patch on his left mandibular area. It shows a shiny atrophic skin surface and diminished sensations. It is due to leprosy. But in pityriasis alba, the skin is characteristically dry and scaly in the center and the sensations are normal. Pityriasis alba is treated by increasing skin moisture. Use oilated soaps like Dove. After each face wash, apply a moisturizing cream like Nivea cream, olive oil or petroleum jelly at night. Apply a mild corticosteroid ointment 2 times a day. Give vitamin A and B complex supplements orally. The patches will resolve over 6 to 8 months. Even otherwise, they resolve at puberty when skin oil production starts.
This man was bitten by a stray dog 6 months back, for which he did not take anti-rabies vaccine. Since yesterday, he has dysphagia, particularly for water. I ask him to eat a banana, which he eats comfortably. But when I give him a glass of water, he cannot take even a sip of water. Just the sight of water and the thought of drinking it brings on a violent involuntary spasm of the pharyngeal, laryngeal, diaphragmatic, and neck muscles. This is the hydrophobia, a diagnostic feature of rabies. It occurs due to early involvement of the brainstem as compared to the other viral encephalitis. Very soon, the patient will become hyperexcited, agitated, with convulsions and coma or respiratory paralysis. The most important aspect of rabies treatment is its prevention by administering human diploid cell vaccine on days 0, 3, 7, 14 and 28, that is 5 doses in 1 month, in all cases where the dog is rabid, or if the dog dies within 5 days, or if the dog is unknown. Observe the lesion over the lower lip. It has a dry, warty, keratinized and hard surface like a horn. This is verrucous type of carcinoma. This type of lesion is usually superficial with minimal deep invasion but is locally recurrent. However, on inspection of the oral cavity, we see a proliferative growth of the right cheek mucosa. This seems to be a carcinoma of cheek spreading onto the lip. Oropharyngeal cancer is the most common cancer in males in India due to the habit of chewing tobacco, pan, betel nut and lime, and it is a totally preventable carcinoma. Hence the importance of the anti-tobacco movement in India. The lesions are of 3 types: ulcerative, proliferative and verrucose. We have seen the proliferative and verrucose types. In the next patient, as we see the lower lip from the head side, there is an ulcer of 1.5 cm size which is raised above the mucosal surface and has a raised edge. It is firm to palpate and has a fleshy floor. This is an early carcinoma, ulcerative type, an ulcer that refuses to heal, larger than 1 cm, raised edge and firm to hard base. This calls for immediate biopsy and treatment. Observe this child with multiple deformities of all the limbs. Both the tibias are bent, right elbow is deformed, and the left humerus shows a non-union of its fracture with development of a false joint. See the painless abnormal movements. The child has had multiple fractures over the years, often with trivial trauma, resulting into these deformities. This is a case of osteogenesis imperfecta, a congenital autosomal recessive inherited disease with defective collagen synthesis, resulting in unduly fragile and brittle bones which fracture repeatedly. They heal normally, but multiple fractures end up in a deformed bone. Note the bent tibia, bent radius, fractured humerus. The sclera is typically blue, a blue sclera. The spine shows scoliosis. The child is short-statured, and there is ligament laxity with excessive movement of the joints. After puberty, the tendency to fracture diminishes and the subsequent life may be normal. Observe the right leg of this patient. The skin shows hyperpigmentation and dermatitis in the lower third of the leg, that is the gaiter's zone above the medial malleolus. Now note the typical ulcer on the medial side. It is located unusually high. Varicose or venous ulcers are commonly located around the ankle, but they can occur anywhere in the gaiter's zone. Why do we label it as a venous ulcer? See the small dilated subcutaneous veins, that is scattered varicosities over the dorsum of the foot and ankle on both the legs. The ulcer is shallow, superficial to the deep fascia, painless, with a ragged margin in the acute phase. The floor is formed by pale granulation tissue. If there is no varicosity of the long saphenous vein, the calf is firm and thick due to an old attack of deep vein thrombosis. A varicose ulcer always heals if the patient is kept in bed with leg elevated for a few days, and regular use of elastic compression bandage will prevent its recurrence, which is very common. This newborn infant has a small appendage over its lower back. It is a small tail-like appendage, firm to palpate, arising at the base of coccyx. This is a sacrococcygeal teratoma arising from totipotent cells. It may be a small appendage like this or a larger one with a rudimentary hand or leg. It may also present as a cyst or a solid mass at the same position, and occasionally it may be internal, anterior to the sacrum and coccyx, that is in the pelvis, presacral teratoma. The sacrococcygeal teratoma should be surgically excised as it has a potential to develop malignancy in later life. This man woke up in the morning to find that he cannot open his right eye. I lift up his eyelid and the eye is deviated to the right, that is to the lateral side, but he does not complain of diplopia. This is the typical appearance of a third nerve palsy. Now we will see the features. There is ptosis due to the paresis of levator palpebrae superioris. The pupil remains covered, so his diplopia is masked till the lid is manually held open. The eyeball is deviated to the lateral side and slightly downwards. Now I will test the movements. Looking to the right, lateral rectus movement is normal, but the eye cannot turn medially upwards and downwards. The pupil in this patient is normal, but in a complete palsy, the pupil is dilated as the parasympathetic nerve supply for pupillary constriction is cut off. So this is a partial palsy and it recovered almost completely over a period of 3 months. That was third nerve palsy with unilateral ptosis, lateral deviation of eyeball and dilated pupil. Note the brownish red macular lesions in the groin fold. The patient complains of severe itching, especially at night. This is tinea cruris, common in inguinal folds, inner thighs and pubic areas. Note the advancing red slightly raised border which sharply demarcates the lesion from the normal skin. This is an active lesion and combined with scratching it has a slightly wet look. It spreads peripherally and clears in the center but with hyperpigmentation. Tiniasis increases with perspiration. So ask the patient to wear loose cotton underwear and treat with topical clotrimazole or tolnaftate and oral fluconazole or ketoconazole. This is another type of tiniasis affecting the feet. Note the diffuse hyperkeratosis with fine scales over the soles and heels. The lesion is growing over the edges where the typical circinate border of tiniasis can be seen. This is a variant of tinea pedis. Sometimes the patient may have hyperkeratosis with cracks on the sole and there is superinfection with tiniasis. While we are at hyperkeratotic foot with multiple cracks, let us see another patient who has a very large and deep crack over his sole and foot. This is abnormally large and abnormally deep. When you see a large crack on the sole, think of leprosy. Test the sensations over the foot, palpate for thickened nerves and look for other features of leprosy. In this patient, the sensations are reduced over a wide area and see the neuropathic ulcer over the great toe. The message is, if crack in the sole is very big, test the sensations and look for signs of leprosy.